Hello everyone, Clamp here. Today we're going to be talking about Zohran Mamdani's socialist agenda for New York City, while cloaked in the language of equity and fairness is poised to repeat historic failures witnessed in various social experiments around the world. First thing I want to talk about are the overly ambitious tax hikes on the wealthy that will cripple economic growth. History shows that the punitive tax policies on the rich often lead to capital flight, reduced investment, and economic stagnation rather than increased revenues. For example, the high top marginal tax rates in the 1970s and 1980s in the U.S. coincided with slower economic growth, prompting Reagan-era tax cuts that revitalized the economy. Similarly, Chicago's aggressive tax hikes led to business departures and worsened fiscal responsibilities. Mamdani's proposed 2% tax on incomes above $1 million and corporate tax hikes risk repeating these mistakes, ultimately shrinking New York's tax base.
Could it be that voters are seeing the writing on the wall that a further exodus of taxpayers isn't good for anyone, particularly for a city so deep in debt? And New York and New Jersey can't afford to lose more taxpayers. From 2012 to 2022, they were among the states losing the most people. 1.7 million fled the Empire State alone. And where are they going? En masse to red states like Fox
Florida
News
and
contributor and former House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz and Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Charlie Hurt to discuss all this. All right, Charlie, let's do something that you don't hear a lot of on the campaign trail. Bring some facts in to the situation, particularly from Mamdani, who keeps talking about everything for free. He's going to spend money on this, spend money on that, and everything. One thing he can't spend money on is money to bring back the millions of taxpayers that already have left. Since 2012, we have lost 1.7 million taxpayers from New York, going to states like Texas, and they've taken billions, $500 billion of income with them to the various states that they've gone to. There's one simple reason why. I mean, it's not rocket science. We have a tax rate in New York City, combined city and state tax rate of 14.77%. Florida, 0. Texas, 0. You can't beat that. And he wants to raise taxes even more, the same taxes that led to almost 2 million people leaving. It's very simple, isn't it?
It should be, and I don't think a single one of those people who has fled New York over the taxes and over Democrat policies is sitting there hitting themselves in the head right now saying, oh man, I should have stuck around for Mamdani's policies.
That's cruel, you're right.
And so kind of the problem here is that exodus of voters out of New York probably ends up actually helping him a little bit because all of the sane people have already begun leaving. The sad thing is that there are still some sane people left in New York, and he's probably going to drive the rest of them out with all of these policies. But the most important thing I think about all of this, and you touched on it right here, is that the rise of Mamdani in New York is not a rejection of sane Republican conservative policies. It's a rejection of decades of Democrat governance. They've tried the socialism light in New York City, and this is the result, and now they're just going to go full-blown communism.
Next, rent controls and freezes destroy housing markets. Rent control policies globally provide short-term relief but damage the housing supply long-term. A classic example is New York City's own rent control history, which has led to housing shortages, declining quality, and discouraged new construction, aggravating the affordability crisis it aimed to solve. Berlin's rent freeze from 2020 to 2022 saw landlords pulling units from the market, reducing available housing. Similar policies in socialist cities like Venezuela led to widespread housing decay and homelessness. Number 3, government-run grocery stores are inefficient and costly failures. Experience with publicly owned grocery stores in U.S. cities like Kansas City and international examples show that government stores cannot compete with private retailers on price, selection, or service. Atlanta's recent city-run grocery faced theft, stocking issues, and required continuous subsidies, demonstrating that such socialist experiments drain taxpayer resources without sustainable benefits. History teaches that government businesses rarely operate efficiently or innovate due to lack of competition and profit motive.
Patrick Toohey. Patrick, just explain this and go into what is happening with these city-owned grocery stores.
So I started writing about this 10 years ago, and I was looking back at some of my columns back then, and I predicted all of this. What happened was the city was eager to do something that looked good, that felt like it was helping people, but they ignored basic free market principles. They invested in a grocery store that private investors wanted to have nothing to do with. And because they didn't then provide the public safety and the transit that people in the community needed, it failed, and it started failing almost immediately.
Well, and of course, it's the taxpayers who, are the ones impacted by this. President Trump gave a speech back in 2019, Patrick, to the Venezuelan community in Miami, and he said this, and I think this just nails it on socialism. This is what he said. He said, "We know that socialism is not about justice. It's not about equality. It's not about lifting up the poor. It's about one thing only: power for the ruling class. And the more power they get, the more power they crave." I mean, that's socialism.
Well, the real tragedy of this here in Kansas City with both the buses and the grocery stores is that working class people who desperately rely on this as transit or as a source of food have been shortchanged, right? They are worse off. Not only is the city lost a bunch of money, but the people that they were supposed to help, that they were trying to help, are made poorer, are made worse off. And again, it's not because we didn't know this was coming. It's because politicians want to look generous. They want to look like they're solving a problem. And in the end, they don't.
Patrick, who profited off of this, though? Who did well? Clearly not the people who are in need of these grocery stores.
No, it may have been the people who owned the property where the grocery store existed before. Maybe it was the people who rehabbed the site years ago. But this is a kind of thing where I don't know that anybody won. The city council does not appreciate the national news they're getting because of these two policies. The people they were trying to help aren't any better off. And me as a Kansas Citian, the places where I want my tax dollars to go, again, public safety, infrastructure, roads, it's not going there.
Well, it's also like the same people who want to dictate what kind of car you drive, the stoves you have, your ability to eat meat. Why do we also want them in control of our lifeline, food?
You make a great point. It's not just Kansas City, but in cities big and small all over the country, what legislators have forgotten is that their job is to basically provide the foundation for private and nonprofit investment, right? Make sure the streets are paved, make sure the streets are safe, make sure infrastructure is dealt with. And then once you do that, nonprofits and business will come in and do everything else. But those basic jobs, public safety, are very difficult. And so sometimes the city just says, you know what, let's skip the vegetables and let's go right to the dessert. And it never works.
Patrick, that's the shocking thing, is the number of cities, as you said, big and small, who experiment with this. That's not the country that we live in.
No, and look, a lot of times it's the fault of the voters, because too often we turn to our local politicians and we say, do something, when in fact what we need to do is say to them, stay out of the way from housing, from transit, from grocery stores. You've made things worse. Get out of the way and let the people build and invest.
The next one is free public transportation and universal child care. While free buses and universal child care are noble goals, their cost is astronomical and often underestimated. Cities like Prague experimented with free transit but had to reinstate fares due to runaway costs and service degradation. Meanwhile, childcare expansions require highly complex administration and face supply shortages, as seen in Scandinavian countries that, despite success, still struggle with access and cost control. Elimination or drastic reduction of private property rights harms incentives. Although Mamdani has not explicitly called for abolishing private residences, any significant encroachment on property rights as seen in socialist regimes such as the Soviet Union and Cuba, leads to disincentives to maintain and improve housing stock, deterioration, and black market activity. The abolition of property rights undermines economic freedom, which conservatives view as the foundation of prosperity. Mamdani's vision is not just an idealistic urban reform plan. It is a replay of socialist failures that have historically damaged economies, reduced freedoms, and worsened quality of life.
Good morning, New York City, and thank you. Last night we made history, and today we begin the work of making a new administration. Welcome to the transition. This is the period over the next few months where we build a city hall that delivers on the promises of our campaign, to make New York City affordable and to make government accountable to the people it serves. As we prepare to govern, we'll start announcing the leaders who will help implement our agenda. People like deputy mayors who oversee entire areas of government, and the commissioners who carry out the critical work of city agencies. These appointments will be driven by excellence, integrity, and hunger to solve old problems with new solutions. Talking to organizers on the front lines of the fight to improve our city, government veterans with proven track records, policy experts from around the country and the world, and working people who know better than anyone what our neighborhoods deserve. And this will be a period, like the campaign we ran and the city hall to come, defined by transparency. Because New Yorkers deserve a government they can trust. On January 1st, I will be your mayor. New Year's Day, and a new era for this city.
Conservative principles emphasize economic freedom, market-driven solutions, and limited government as a path to prosperity and genuine social mobility. Given the well-documented pitfalls of socialist policies across history and geographies, New Yorkers should be wary of this blueprint and economic decline.
Oh, and one more thing. Remember how I told you a few months ago to stop sending us money? You can start again. This transition requires staff, research, and an infrastructure that can meet this moment. And it will be made possible by the people who built and believe in this movement. So I hope you'll make a donation at transition2025.com. Now let's get to work.
That's all for this video. God bless. See you on the next one.